So I've been writing journals since I was 10, and now it has become rather shattered memoirs here and there, including this YouTube channel where I just leave a record of my thoughts and experiences. But I still do remember the first time I started writing my first diary. But before we talk about that, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. So I was 10 and I was doing hide and seek with my friends, and we were doing it inside a building. I went into a toilet compartment because the bottom part of the door conceals you very well in Korea. Anyways, I was waiting to hear someone screaming outside when the seeker finds one of my fellow friends, but I got really bored because I didn't hear any sound. So instead of going outside of the compartment, because I was afraid I might get caught, I pulled up my phone, this thick slide phone I got from my dad. Back then, I did not have a SIM card, I just had the machine, but it had a notepad option. Of course, it did not have the QWERTY keyboard, so I just typed with the terribly organized mechanical board, writing, hey, these are the things happening in my life. I'm about to move on to the next grade, from 5th grade to 6th grade in elementary school, and things are changing like these, just magically, out of nowhere. I had the strangest awakening of my consciousness. And ever since then, I've journaled memoirs here and there. I have multiple apps on my phone, and I've written them to text files as I grew up and ruminated on every detail of my existence. As I got into puberty, I was undergoing mental metamorphosis because I read a lot of philosophy books, the ones translated to Korean, because I wanted to look like a smart, cool kid, which unfortunately ended up pulling a similar breed of geeks and nerds. But I had thought about some ideas and written about them, and I start to extrapolate some of them. Some of these ideas are just embarrassing, but some are still, in my opinion, interesting to this point. For example, I was thinking of my life as a metaphor of creating a conjecture from evidence and thinking about their impacts. Imagine I had a really terrible experience with a person, and imagine I had a really good experience with this person. How much experiences do I need, or pieces of information do I need to finally say this person is a bad person, right? Or this person is a good person? It's really hard to say, hey, do you need like 5 experiences? Or do you need like 10 pieces of experiences? And also, it spans over different levels, because if you meet this person is Korean, this person is like religious, this person is secular, this person is like wealthy. Every background is surrounding upon this person. So how much of these experiences do you need to finally conclude that people from these backgrounds are nice, therefore? And that's really understandable, because if you're in puberty, you try to exaggerate your experiences. And what is the right lesson we should take away from that? What kind of statements can we extrapolate? Is it reasonable to say Koreans are nice, or religious people are nice, or secular people are nice, or even generalize about all humans at all, The reason this is still interesting is because these days we see this extreme conversation about everything, every identity. And when I see this extreme conversation about intersectionality, it kind of reminds me of the old thought, a person has all sorts of different properties, and given those properties, you can infer the nature of this person. And also those extreme conversations about gender around us, there's strong temptation to generalize our personal experiences. As you see in this famous quote, the private is the political. And when you generalize these experiences, it makes you find some universal truth, and you're like a god. But it's really difficult to localize our experience and understand that we're limited to our own perspectives and biases when we're constantly swept away by the temptation. And I think sometimes it's really hard to even admit it, because we want to present ourselves as somewhat more like omniscient. I don't know, when you think of it in modern terms, for example, if you have a really bad experience with men and dwell on it, concepts like toxic masculinity can start to feel very familiar and comfortable, even though those concepts are a clear extrapolation of our own individual experiences. In English, there's a term toxic masculinity, but in Korea, men are labeled as potential offenders. The names are different, but the concept is the same. It's extremely tempting to take individual experiences and extrapolate it to higher level. And you can see this in every aspect of our life. When you think about it, for example, when you say, I'm really struggling this month with job applications and keep getting rejected, you can just take it further and say, screw my life, it has always been like this and it will be like this. Because it is extremely easy and tempting to let frustration push us toward conclusions. Just like, hey, there are some pieces of evidence to support your theory that your life is completely screwed, right? It's really hard to keep antithetical theories, especially these days. We're exposed to a lot of information through this extremely flexible and elastic digital space. And because we're constantly exposed to the amount of information that we cannot even process ourselves, we tend to think that's the end of our world, end of our viewpoint. And with the extremely powerful online digital device that we have in our hand, we just think that's all there is. So that was a part of my journals. Or another thing I had in mind was this idea of agnosticism, when people say, I do not know if God exists because it's beyond our intellectual level. Because I wondered, everyone is making the same level of generalized statement. And I started thinking about how we often infer existence through cues from observable attributes. In that sense, it seemed like the cues were more important than the conclusion itself. And this relates to the first thought I talked about. But how much evidence and counter evidence do you need to justifiably argue that you're therefore agnostic? Is it because God is typically considered atemporal? What does it mean to be atemporal? Or how would such a being function without time as a reference point? And these are the sort of questions I have had, and later these questions became the foundation for me to realize that many brilliant people have already thought through my questions or similar ones. But anyways, throughout my puberty, like many adolescents, I experienced small or big conflicts with my parents. At the time, I often believed that I knew better than them, just as most teenagers do. And that's why it's interesting to look back and talk about these moments with my parents again, as I have grown up from that period. So I have an entire archive of experience to draw from. I think that's what's really valuable, and it's a strong advantage of having those detailed memories, because when you later grow up and mature more, you can draw from those experiences and bring up those memories and talk about why your parents made those decisions and ask them directly with different perspectives. And I think that can accelerate your development as well. And because it's an archive, if you could pre-process that archive to refine it with AI models and reconstruct those experiences, that would be also very valuable as well. So yes, honestly, journaling is to remember your consciousness at that moment in the easiest way, but I think you can do it with video recording yourself. And as our consciousness develops over the course of our life, it's really, really fascinating to see the experiences of your developing stages. I want to mention something about the conjecture metaphor that I brought up, that we draw conclusions from the evidence presented in our life to connect the dots between our experiences. I think in the early stages of our life, while our worldview and model are not yet solidified, when they're especially being wired, it's really important to keep them objectified, because you can later come back to those specific traumatic or memorable moments to extract other perspectives and continue digesting the same experience better. Because I think our childhood experiences are crucial in wiring our brain, but once it's wired, we cannot go back in time and ask ourselves why these ideas are implemented inside ourselves. And probably you would understand this metaphor if you study computer science or machine learning, because at the beginning of your training, what you feed yourself is really, really important, because that kind of decides where you are going to be in your pathway to the objective. But even though no matter how valuable those moments are, they never come back. And throughout our life, we experience a lot of different stuff. And while navigating through those, we kind of instill some idea in our brain. And in later stages of your life, if you wonder why those ideas are instilled in your brain and why those concepts are so ingrained in yourself, you cannot never go back in time and see why that happened unless you have detailed journals of yourself. And I think that's the biggest advantage of writing journals, because instead of using it for a one-time lesson and burying it inside your mind as a traumatic form, you can later come back and retrieve where the ideas that you currently have actually came from. Anyways, I hope you liked this video, and please share your ideas or opinions in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.